I can see a light. A brand new day. You know, I don't know that I could have seen that light when I left the Catholic Church in my late teens with doubts and skepticism about organized religion. You know, when I left with doubts about a lot of things. If there was any kind of a God or divinity, what the meaning was of all the rituals and traditions. But since I've left, I've learned to value my doubts as I continue on in my spiritual journey. Perhaps some of you at one time or another in your lives have experienced doubt or skepticism about religion in general, or a specific religion, or certain religious teachings or truths or beliefs, or certain life meanings, or even your own ideas of what truth or beliefs you have or meanings you've attributed, whether you're as certain about those as you used to be. Have your doubts, when they have come up, been something you've avoided? Or something you've welcomed as a useful tool on your spiritual journey? As I've continued on my spiritual journey, particularly as we have mostly emerged from this pandemic world, I've started wondering more about doubt and certainty and faith and how they all fit for me today. Like many Unitarian Universalists, I have explored a number of religious traditions, considered how they fit for me. I have been a theist, an agnostic, back and forth, but never wholly an atheist. I guess atheism feels to me too absolute. Sort of like I put everything in a box and I stored it on a shelf, and it offers me less opportunity and wondering on my spiritual journey. But that's just me. And I remain open to different perspectives on atheism and how that might help me explore my journey through life. We have a number of atheists in our congregation and Unitarian Universalism, and I can imagine that their or your understanding of atheism may be very different than mine. You might, or they might, see atheism as spiritually, emotionally, ethically rich, full of awe and wonder. And man, that is wonderful. Because Unitarian Universalism offers a community where we can coexist peacefully with these differences. I can see atheism one way, you can see it another. We're able to share our perspectives with each other without judgment as we learn and grow from our sharing. We gather here as Unitarian Universalists, at least in part, to affirm that revelation is not sealed, that what we understand as truth is fluid. Our faith, if we want to call it that, is active, always in process, always having the potential for change as we experience life, as we share with one another our experiences, our truths, our beliefs, our meanings. of our many and varied experiences. You know, I'm frequently drawn to a song as I think about all this by Peter Mayer. Some of you may know of him. He wrote Blue Boat Home, a song we like to sing around here from time to time. But this song is called God is a River. Now, some of you may have heard it. I'm going to share a few lines. In the ever-shifting water of the river of this life, I was swimming, seeking comfort. I was wrestling waves to find a boulder I could cling to, a stone to hold me fast, where I might let the fretful water of this river round me pass. And so I found an anchor, a blessed resting place, a trusty rock I called my Savior, for there I would be safe from the river and its dangers, and I proclaimed my rock divine, and I prayed to it, protect me. And the rock replied, God is a river, not a stone. God is a wild, raging rapids, a slow, meandering flow. God is deep and narrow passage and a peaceful sandy shoal. God is the river swimmer. So let go. So I'm really drawn to this because it affirms for me letting go of absolute, unchangeable truths, beliefs, or meanings. It affirms letting go what we might call the universe, or God, or goddess, or whatever is beyond my narrow self, and flow. Go with the flow. Now, the flow may influence me or aid me or support me at times in this complex world. But I also know that some meanings, some truths, some beliefs are transient, only useful at certain points in my life or in certain circumstances. As you listen to Peter Mayer's song, the word God may get in the way. But here's the thing. The words we use to describe truths or beliefs or meanings are imperfect. Words like spirit or soul or God or reverence or holy or sacred, just to name a few. I have a tendency, perhaps like many of you, to find something to hold on to. A truth, a belief, a meaning that helps me cope with the world and its complexity and its trauma and its pain and its war. A metaphorical rock in the river. But in reality, the river is life, is God, is spirit, is whatever you want to call it. And we're all in process, including the river. And while I can feel the importance, the value, the usefulness of certain truths, beliefs, and meanings as I flow along a sometimes wildly raging and sometimes slowly meandering river, I'm hampered in how to share that with you. Because of the words, our imperfect language, I want to listen to how this impacts you and how I have been impacted by it. And even though there's a struggle in how we talk about this, how we share our truths and meanings and beliefs, I still believe, I still think that it helps me and maybe you to ground me, to help me, to stabilize me, for us to talk about them. I guess the reality is, in this ever-changing river we live in, I guess you could say sharing with you all, with each other. Maybe that's my rock. What do you think about doubting Thomas, the Jesus skeptic, the possible Unitarian Universalist at the beginning of this Christian faith? What do you think he would think about this idea of beliefs and faiths and meaning ebbing and flowing, changing, moving as we move through life? As we move through mundane and profound and transformative experiences, as we explore various world religions, philosophies, and TED Talks, perhaps he would say that until he had proof that what he was hearing or reading is true, he wouldn't believe it. Perhaps he would say that if he couldn't see, smell, taste, or touch it, it was no truth to him. Perhaps he would say, if a truth is not passed through the shadow of doubt and the fire of thought, it is weak and untempered. In other words, for faith to have meaning, it must be grounded in reality. Well, that's Thomas. What about you? What is your criteria for determining whether a belief, a truth, a certain meaning about a life experience you've had works for you, or helps ground you? For you, is it deep reflection on it? Is it talking with others about it? Do you take it on and try to find out how it works in your life? And what if that belief or meaning or truth changes? Do you still hold it gently for a little while to see if at some point it might be useful or that it still resonates with you? Do you accept a belief or a truth or a meaning only if it is grounded in reality and science and makes rational sense, that has passed through the shadow of doubt and the fire of thought? If it isn't rational, logical, reality-based, thoroughly explored, do you consider the truth, a belief, meaning, weak or untempered? Some of you may have heard this story I'm about to share. It's an old Buddhist story. It might help us, perhaps. A man was wounded by an arrow, smeared with poison. His friends and companions, his kinsmen and relatives, wanted to find him a doctor to help him. But the man said, "I will not have this arrow removed until I know whether the person who wounded me was a warrior, a priest, a merchant, or a worker. He went on to say, I won't have this arrow removed until I know the given clan of the man or woman who wounded me, until I know whether this person was tall or medium or short, until I know this person's home or village or town or city, until I know whether the bow that was used was a long bow or a crossbow, and the bowstring was fiber, whether it was fiber or bamboo, or sinew or hemp or bark, until I know whether the shaft with which I was wounded was wild or cultivated, until I know whether the feathers of the shaft with which I was wounded were those of a vulture, a stork, a hawk, a peacock, or another bird, or whether the shaft that I was wounded by was made with sinew of ox, or water buffalo, or monkey. I won't have this arrow removed until I know whether the shaft in which I was wounded was that of a common arrow, a curved arrow, a barbed arrow, a calf-toothed arrow. And so the man died. And all those things remain unknown to him. The story is meant to illustrate the challenge of accepting a new truth or belief or meaning. The question we have to ask is, how much do we need to know? How fully do we need to understand before we accept a truth or meaning or purpose, belief into our lives? If we had been metaphorically struck by a shaft of new insight, pierced by a sudden recognition of a new truth, if that new truth is resonating deep within us, how do we respond? Now, I'm not recommending blind faith. Accepting truth or belief or meaning without any reflection. Reflection is important. It's how we make meaning. But if I spend all my time in reflection, is that really helpful? To me? To the world? At some point, I know I need to decide if the truth, belief, or meaning is worth acting upon, worth bringing into my life, bringing into the world to try to change it, or possibly change me. As we consider a truth, meaning, belief, we can be tempted to put it in a box. The two boxes that are the most extreme are a faith without doubt, the kind of faith so impatient with Thomas, for instance, that it would cast him out for asking any important questions. And on the other extreme, there is only the world of sensation and science, thus creating doubt and the rather difficult acceptance of living a life with any faith. I think Thomas presents something different. Thomas lives a critical faith. Thomas knows what it is to lose, to suffer, to find his hopes devastated, but he also knows what he really wants. He doesn't deny his doubts or his faith. And that's what I want too. I want both faith and doubt. Because I think doubt is useful. But it is not the end of spiritual exploration. We will never have all the information we need about any truth or belief or meaning in exactly the way we need it, when we need it, or how we need it. I do believe some reflection is helpful and doubt is useful. But I also believe there is a limit to how far to explore a truth, belief, or meaning if I think it's going to be useful to me and to the world. And I've come to find that doubt has purpose for me, and perhaps you, as we move through our spiritual journey. And perhaps not the usefulness you might think. Being willing to doubt your truths, beliefs, and meanings, and hear alternative viewpoints and fresh ideas, at least to me, is a sign of a healthy spirituality and encompasses a sort of humility that helps you to connect more openly and honestly with others and be more tolerant of differences. Not being sure what you believe at times can be uncomfortable, but I believe it's a sign of a mature heart and mind. And my friends, it's okay to worry about your truth or belief or meaning. It's actually a good indication you understand the ones you've chosen well enough to see them in their full complexity. And you haven't settled into just complacency about your beliefs or your faith or the meaning you attribute to things. Your self-doubt is likely to spur you to ever be on a spiritual journey. And don't be led astray by thinking that just because you have found a truth, a belief, or a meaning that seems to work for you now, that is synonymous with lack of doubt. Just affirm for yourself that life will provide future opportunities, I promise you, for questioning and questing, and that you're probably okay. We have doubt, all of us. We have faith, all of us, in varying degrees. How we choose to work with them is up to us, to each of us, and to all of us. As I've opened up to both faith and doubt at different points in my life, I have found that the path forward generally becomes clearer if I'm ready, if I'm trusting that it will, and have people in my life like all of you. People to talk to share with, to reflect with, to consider, to come home to. As interfaith chaplain and college instructor of world religions, Fred Lamott wrote, "When times are dark, the way becomes clear. Trust your breath. Rest your heart. Bow to a stranger. This is the gospel of astonishment. And if you are completely lost, come home. Come home to one another." So may it be.